Is baseball really as safe as it appears? You might be surprised to learn that MLB players put their lives on the line every time they step onto the diamond. Baseball, often perceived as a safe and non-contact sport, hides a dark reality. It's more dangerous than you could ever imagine. On the surface, baseball may seem slow-paced and less physically demanding than sports like football, but the reality is far from it. The diamond becomes a battleground where players encounter life-threatening situations. From batters getting struck by fastballs to brutal collisions at home plate and pitchers facing 100-mile-per-hour line drives, far too often for comfort. It's a lethal mess that leaves players with devastating imprints. Today, we'll explore the often overlooked dangers of baseball. Watch closely as we unveil the shocking reality behind this seemingly innocent sport. In the years before, it might surprise you how many plays and collisions were considered legal in baseball. Players could virtually get away with foul slides at home due to the absence of regulations. They also used to play in stadiums with concrete walls and no dugout fences, leading to frightening consequences and, of course, injuries. Fans weren't left out of the ill experiences either, watching games with no nets to protect them from flying balls. Yet, it's even more surprising that more MLB players are getting hurt today than before, despite several improvements in the game rules and equipment. Past teams had to endure times of insufficient medical treatment and game conditions, but somehow had fewer injuries than today's league players. Contemporary hitters and pitchers prioritize arm care and benefit from superior medical attention, but the results have declined unexpectedly. Recent years have seen a surge in Tommy John injuries, surpassing the entire tally of the 80s. Improved game outfits aren't helping matters either, as players still get hit in the head, resulting in injuries that can be slightly arguable. Some of these injuries are real, while some teams have gone so far as to fake them to keep their pitchers and gain strategic advantages in games. Don't be too surprised by that. Despite the league's persistent efforts to ensure player safety, and even the introduction of helmets to keep players safe, some game hazards remain unavoidable, like a player smashing through a wall. Luckily, it isn't concrete anymore. In baseball, the out-of-play area is separated by a wall that is still in the playing area, but unfortunately has caused several safety dangers for players. Early baseball stadiums were worse, with walls made out of concrete that even caused a player to suffer a fractured skull. Pete Reiser got a fractured skull running into a wall and was temporarily paralyzed running into a different wall. He ended up suffering a devastating result of a fractured skull a second time after running into another wall. Considering the hazards caused by the concrete wall, MLB gradually switched to chain link fences, which, did this. Willie Mays, in a memorable incident, collided with a chain link fence, got knocked out cold, and miraculously still caught the ball. The chain link fences didn't last long either, and then the league switched to padded walls for more safety, but it did quite the opposite. Players crashed through the padded walls while chasing balls, prompting the league to pad all walls for increased safety, ultimately reducing injuries and instances of players smashing through. But no one talks about the millions of dollars teams lose in treating injured players every year. In 1998, teams paid $116 million in salary to injured players who couldn't even play. By 2022, this figure had increased to $843,681,572, and an astonishing $969,241,578 was recorded this year. This prompted the league to make adjustments to game rules, allowing for shocking legal plays. In the MLB, players used to be able to slide into a bag anywhere they wanted, until something ugly happened in the 2015 NLCS. Facing reliever Bartolo Colon, Howie Kendrick hit a hard one-hopper to second baseman Daniel Murphy, who backhanded the ball and flipped it to Tejada for a force-out with little chance of a double play. Chase Utley then ensured there would be no relay throw with a nasty slide. With Tejada's back turned to first base as he pirouetted to catch Murphy's toss, Utley crashed into his legs and upended him. Tejada suffered a broken leg caused by Utley's overzealous slide. While the MLB argued that the slide was completely legal, Utley's slide faced several backlashes from the league and the internet. This incident led the MLB to outlaw takeout slides unless the fielder was directly in the way of the bag. The goal was to stop collisions on the base pass to put an end to foul plays, similar to the moment in the 2006 season when A.J. Pazinski collided with Michael Barrett. Running home after a flying ball hit by Brian Anderson, A.J. ran into Michael with full force and absolutely shattered him. It led to a nasty fistfight because Michael thought that the play was dirty, as he didn't have the ball yet, and this slide was still legal. What about the moment Jonathan LaCroix was carted off the field in the 8th inning after a collision at the plate with Houston's Jake Marisnick? Marisnick crashed into LaCroix as he attempted to field the throw, and the catcher immediately fell on his back. He didn't move for a few seconds before struggling to sit up. The moment Lucroy lifted his head off the ground a few seconds later, blood was seen dripping from his nose. Or the time a completely legal collision resulted in Buster Posey breaking his fibula and tearing 3 ligaments in his ankle. Scott Cousins' fatal collision made Posey miss the rest of the season, and he received death threats for his actions. The MLB then implemented a Buster Posey rule that doesn't allow a runner to run out of a direct line to the place to initiate contact with the catcher or any player covering the plate. This rule essentially bans any collisions at the home plate. Banning this resulted in a 45% reduction in injuries at home plate and a 36% reduction in injuries banning collisions at second base. Did this stop the increased rate of injuries recorded? Unfortunately, no. While these rules were enacted for safety, they only work for some and had the rest on the receiving end. Non-pitchers are now suffering more sliding injuries than ever before, especially when sliding head first. Banning collisions has become one of the several reasons head first slides are more frequent in games. But did you know that baseball in the early 90s was even more hazardous, not just for the players but also for the fans? During sellout, spectators would sit on the field, essentially forming a makeshift fence. The league seemed indifferent to their safety, and players hitting the ball past this improvised fence were awarded a ground rule triple. In the 1903 series alone, there were a staggering 17 ground rule triples. Stadiums were poorly constructed, posing dangers to both fans and players. For instance, Yankee Stadium had stone monuments and a flagpole in the outfield that were considered in play. That's how dire the situation was. Debris littering the field wasn't uncommon either. Umpires no longer needed to interrupt the game because players had grown accustomed to it. It reached a point where Dick Allen even wore a batting helmet while playing in the infield. In 1971, hitters started wearing helmets, marking a significant shift in player safety. Fast forward to today, hitters use a range of protective gear, such as elbow guards, shin guards, face guards, and improved helmets. Despite these advancements, injuries still occur at an alarming rate. With pitchers throwing faster, batters are more vulnerable to devastating hits. The danger is more pronounced than ever in baseball history. Speaking of dangerous consequences, let's not forget Ray Chapman's tragic fate. After being hit in the head by a pitch from Carl Mays, Chapman died 12 hours later. He remains the only player to have died directly from an injury sustained during a major league game. His death prompted baseball to introduce rules like replacing dirty balls and eventually banning spitballs after the 1920 season. Chapman's death was also one of the examples cited to justify the wearing of batting helmets. However, it took over 30 years to adopt the rule that required their use. Despite these safety measures, hitters are still getting hit in the head, increasing the risk of serious injuries. The MLB has implemented rules like automatic ejections for pitchers intentionally hitting batters and a hit-by-point system. However, players were initially resistant to these safety measures, much like when they rejected the use of helmets decades ago. In 2018, Jose Urania was infamously ejected for hitting Ronald Acuna Jr. with a pitch intentionally. The league's effort to protect players also include a point system, resulting in immediate ejection for players accumulating a certain number of points. Despite these safety measures, incidents like Matt Shoemaker's emergency brain surgery in 2016 following a 105 mph line drive highlight the ongoing risks. Shoemaker was rushed to the hospital for surgery to stop bleeding after being struck on the right side of the head by a line drive off the bat of Seattle's Kyle Seager in that game. Additional headgear has been introduced to reduce injuries, but while the MLB is striving to keep players safe, there's a surprising increase in recorded injuries, raising questions about their authenticity. And yes, some injuries have been staged. While players are busy staging fake injuries, why not create a genuine epic moment by smashing the subscribe button right away? That right there is legal. Fake injuries are now at an all-time high in the league, becoming a controversial strategy employed by teams to manipulate game outcomes. A player recently confessed to being coerced into faking an injury under the threat of being cut from the team, highlighting the ethical concerns surrounding this practice. The MLB decreased the minimum number of days injured players had to sit out of games in 2017 from 15 days to 10 days. Fake injuries are a strategy used by teams to their advantage by diagnosing their starting pitcher with a non-existent injury and only using them for one start. However, deciphering between real and fake injuries can be challenging. Such is the case when Derek Holland went on the injury list with a left index finger bone bruise following a 12-11 loss to Colorado. That was totally fake. Holland later admitted to faking the injury, resulting in his demotion to the bullpen. However, not all injuries are simulated, as exemplified by Joel Zamaya's shoulder injury caused by excessive play of Guitar Hero. This might sound quite ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. He even earned himself a spot in the credits for Guitar Hero 2. While teams may resort to fake injuries as a preventive measure, the vulnerability of baseball players to severe injuries like arm sprains, wrist injuries, Tommy John, knee injuries, or tears remains a significant concern. The MLB has witnessed some of the worst incidents, such as Dave Draveki's arm snap that could be heard throughout the entire stadium, a consequence of hastening his recovery period after surgery for a desmoid tumor. He resumed pitching a year later and had severe consequences when his humerus bone snapped and he collapsed on the mound, and this ultimately ended his season. Curiously, despite modern players pitching fewer games than their predecessors, the rate of Tommy John surgeries has increased. In 1884, old Hoss Radburn threw more complete games in a single season than the entire league combined in the 2021 season, and twice as many in 2023. Nolan Ryan once threw an astonishing 235 pitches in one game, a record that still stands today. Yet, injuries were seemingly less frequent than they are now. This may be attributed to pitchers of the past being accustomed to throwing a substantial number of pitches and somehow adapting to it without enduring subsequent harm. Ironically, the only way to avoid getting hurt seems to be getting used to throwing pitches, which in turn increases the player's risk of injury. Quite ironic, isn't it? This difficulty in solving elbow injuries in MLB is why Tommy John surgery has become more frequent. It isn't just the worst injury a player can face, but also a time-consuming recovery process. Rushing a player after the surgery can be even more devastating, just like the tragic end to Dave Draveki's baseball career. It can be argued that pitchers are more prone to elbow injuries due to the risks they take in generating enough torque and velocity to pitch a fastball. In fact, teams actively seek out players with higher fastball pitching velocities to gain an advantage in pitches. As we marvel at the grace of a perfect swing and the finesse of a well-executed double play, it's crucial to acknowledge the inherent risks that accompany the pursuit of excellence in the game. The debate surrounding the safety of these athletes is ongoing, and the question lingers: could there be a way to reduce the dangerous risks that baseball players subject themselves to? Share your thoughts and views in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel for more baseball updates. We'll see you next time.